Hello dear students, I am your Nagaraj sir. Let's take up a lesson, one of the important lessons in your coursebook is 2D. What do you mean by 2D? You might know the word dia, but it is 2D. Okay, that's one of the important questions which is to be answered while we read and understand this particular lesson. What is the writer talking about? Leo Tolstoy, a Russian writer, one of the renowned writers of the world, no doubt. He is a thinker. It's not just a story, it's an attempt to correct ourselves. It is to purgate ourselves. Take it from him. It is to purgate, an attempt to purgate ourselves. So, what is the story about? Okay, we may have to understand this idea at present. What is the story about? It's about a criminal, okay, and it's in fact a case study. As I've told you, it is to purgate us. Many of us have made our mind, in fact, polluted. That's why our thinking is not proper. We do go wrong all the time. We be negative. We produce negative ideas. It's because we have fostered our mind so. Here is an attempt that Leo Tolstoy has made through this story. It's an attempt where he comments on lapses, procedure lapses that we see everywhere around us, in our governance, in our administration, in our law, everywhere. So he comments on using the genre called sarcasm, okay, sarcasm, otherwise parody, we may call parody. Everything is hilarious, the attempt, the presentation, that he has made. You really can't stop yourselves from laughing, okay. The presentation is so, but the fact or the subject is in fact is to be pondered over, is to be thought of, otherwise is to be considered, is serious. That's why we may travel this journey, it's possible, as easily as possible. We may not understand when this lesson ends, the story ends at all. It makes us read, and the reading becomes, in fact, without hassles, without efforts. It goes effortlessly. We'll be able to reach the other end of the story, from this end of the story to the other end of the story, or from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. It's possible to reach, okay. Moreover, you'll enjoy. It's just like watching a movie, comedy, comical scene. Everything is from the beginning to the end. But what is to be taken in, what is to be understood, what is to be digested, what is to be remembered, is something that makes you be purgated, that makes you be educated. Okay, in this light, okay, start reading. Okay, 2D, it's in fact double-edged, phrase. Double-edged means one is positive, one is negative. Double-edged science we call, double-edged. So one is positive, one is negative, the meaning. Turiya means something of great value, one of the meanings, that used to be deciphered. Now, what is what is of great value here in the story? That is to be answered. You have to answer this question yourselves. That is one of the things. And the second thing is, the second meaning is, what is too expensive, too costly, expensive, very expensive. What is expensive? What is of value, great value, and what is so expensive, very expensive in the story? Okay, look at the pre-reading question. Can you see the text? What do you think would happen? What do you think would happen if due to procedural lapses, delay, the court were to convert the verdict of death sentence into life imprisonment? Okay, this is a question in connection with the story. Okay, without reading the story, it's impossible to understand and be able to understand, the question. Okay, but there are certain things which can be thought of. For example, what do you think would happen? That's why when you can think, it's possible to think. If due to procedural lapses, delay, the court were to convert the verdict of death sentence into life imprisonment. So, the first question which is to be asked is it always suggested to change what is decided, what's been decided? When, if it is so, when can the court change its decision because of procedural lapses, due to procedural lapses or delay? Then what will be its repercussions? Okay, all these primary questions can be asked. Okay, let's start reading. Let's read. Look at the sketch. There is a person behind bars and somebody who points at him and talking to him. Okay, let's come to the picture later. Okay, let's get started. Let's start reading. Okay, once let's go to the text or go into the text. Look into the text. We'll take something first in, okay, inside, and after we'll be able to grind many more things, many more ideas, we'll be able to digest. Okay, that's why I want to give you stimulus first, food for thought first, and later I will try to understand everything one by one, line by line, word by word, like that it will go. Okay, let's get started. Near the borders of France and Italy, on the shore of the Mediterranean Sea, look at this, look at the picture, lies a tiny little kingdom called Monaco. Many a small country town can boast more inhabitants than this kingdom, for there are only about 7,000 of them all told. And if all the land in kingdom were divided, there would not be an acre for each inhabitant. But in this toy kingdom, there is a real kinglet, and he has a palace, and courtiers, and ministers, and a bishop, and generals, and an army. It's not a large army, only 60 men in all, but still it's an army. There are also taxes in the kingdom, as elsewhere, a tax on tobacco and on wine and spirits and a poll tax. But the people there drink and smoke as people do in other countries. There are so few of them that the prince would have been hard put to it to feed his courtiers and officials and to keep himself, if he hadn't found a new and special source of income. This special revenue comes from a gaming house where people play roulette. People play, and whether they win or lose, the keeper always gets a percentage on the turnover. Out of his profits, he pays a large sum to the prince. The reason he pays so much is that it is the only such gambling establishment left in Europe. Some of the little German sovereigns used to keep gaming houses of the same kind, but some years ago they were forbidden to do so. The reason they were stopped was because these gaming houses did so much harm. A man would come and try his luck, then he would risk all he had and lose it. Then he would even risk money that did not belong to him, lose that too, and then in despair he would drown or shoot himself. So the Germans forbade their rulers to make money in this way, but there was no one to stop the Prince of Monaco, and he remained with a monopoly of the business. So now everyone wants to gamble. Who wants to gamble goes to Monaco. Whether they win or lose, the prince gains by it. You can't earn stone palaces by honest labor, as the proverb goes or says. The kinglet of Monaco knows it's a dirty business, but what is it to do? He has to live, and to draw revenue from drink or from tobacco is also not a nice thing. So he lives and reigns and racks in the money and holds his court with all the ceremony of a real king. He has his coronation, his levies, he rewards, sentences and pardons. He also has his reviews, councils, laws and courts of justice, just like the other kings, only all on a smaller scale. Now what happened? Now, it happened a few years ago that a murder was committed in this toy prince's domains. The people of that country, the kingdom, are peaceable, and such a thing hadn't happened before. The judges assemble with much ceremony and try the case in the most judicial manner. There were judges and prosecutors and jurymen and barristers. They argued and judged, and at last they condemned the criminal to have his head cut off as the law directs. So far so good. Next they submitted the sentence to the prince. The prince read the sentence and confirmed it. If the fellow must be executed, execute him. There was only one hitch in the matter, and that was that they had neither guillotine for cutting the heads off nor an executioner. The ministers considered the matter and decided to address an inquiry to the French government, asking whether the French could not lend them a machine or an expert to cut off criminal's head, and if so, would the French kindly inform them what it would cost. The letter was sent, that's why. A week later, the reply came. A machine and an expert could be supplied, and the cost would be 16,000 francs. This was laid before the king. He thought it over. 16,000 francs? The wretch is not worth the money, said he. Can't it be done somehow cheaper? Why 16,000 francs is more than 2 francs a head on the whole population. The people won't stand it. It may cause a riot. So, a council was called to consider what could be done, and it was decided to send a similar inquiry to the King of Italy. France, Italy. Now, the French government is republican, they thought, and has no proper respect for king, but the King of Italy was a brother monarch and might be induced to do the thing cheaper. So the letter was written, and a prompt reply was received. from the Italian government. The Italian government wrote that they would have pleasure in supplying both a machine and expert, and the whole cost would be 12,000 francs, including travel expenses. This was cheaper, comparatively cheaper. So, but still it seemed too much to the king. The rascal was really not worth the money, he thought. It would still mean nearly 2 francs more per head on the taxes. Another council was that's why called. They discussed and considered how it could be done with less expense. Could not one of our soldiers perhaps be got to do it in a rough and homely fashion? Can't it be done homely fashion? Can't it be done in a homely fashion? The general was called and was asked, find us a soldier who would cut the man's head off. In war, they don't mind killing people. In fact, that's what they are trained for. So the general talked it over with the soldiers to see whether one of them would not undertake the job. But none of the soldiers would do it. No, they said, we don't know how to do it. It's not a thing we have been taught. What was to be done? Again, the ministers considered and reconsidered. They assembled a commission and a committee and a subcommittee, and at last they decided that the best thing would be to alter the death sentence to one of imprisonment for life. This would enable the prince to show his mercy, and it would come cheaper, they thought. The prince agreed to this, and so the matter was arranged. The only hitch now was that there was no suitable prison for a man sentenced for life. There was a small lockup where people were sometimes kept temporarily, but there was no strong prison fit for permanent use. However, they managed to find a place that would do, and they put the young fellow there and placed a guard over him. The guard had to watch the criminal and had also to fetch his food from the palace kitchen. The prisoner remained there month after month till a year had passed. But when a year had passed, the kinglet, looking over the account of his income and expenditure, one day noticed a new item of expenditure. This was for the keep of the criminal, nor was it a small item either. There was a special guard, and there was also the men's food. It came to more than 600 francs a year. And the worst of it was that the fellow was still young and healthy and might live for 50 years. When one came to reckon it up, the matter was serious. It would never do. So the prince summoned his ministers and said to them, "You must find some cheaper way of dealing with this rascal. The present plan is too expensive." And the ministers met and considered and reconsidered till one of them said, "Gentlemen, in my opinion, we must dismiss the guard." But then rejoined another minister, "The fellow will run away." "Well," said the first speaker, "let him run away and be hanged to him." So they reported the result of their deliberations to the kinglet, and he agreed with them. The guard was dismissed, and they waited to see what would happen. All that happened was that at dinner time, the criminal came out, and not finding his guard, went to the prince's kitchen to fetch his own food, that is dinner. He took what was given him, returned to the prison, shut the door on himself, and stayed inside. Next day, the same thing occurred. He went for his food at the proper time, but as for running away, he did not show the least sign of it. What was to be done? They considered the matter again. "We shall have to tell him straight out," said they, "that we don't want to keep him." So the Minister of Justice had him brought before him. "Why do you not run away?" said the minister. "There is no guard to keep you. You can go where you like. The prince will not mind." This part is very important from the examination point of view. My dear students, are you there listening to me? I dare say the prince would not mind, replied the man, but I have nowhere to go. Can I do? What can I do? I'm sorry, not can I do. It's what can I do? You have ruined my character by your sentence, and people will turn their backs on me. Besides, I've got out of the way of working. You are treating me badly. It's not fair. In the first place, when once you sentenced me to death, you ought to have executed me, but you did not do it. That's one thing. I did not complain about that. Then you sentenced me to imprisonment for life, and I put a guard to bring my food. But after a time you took him away again, and I had to fetch my own food. Again I did not complain. But now you actually want me to go away. I can't agree to that. You may do as you like, but I won't go away. What was to be done? Once more the council was summoned. What course could they adopt? The man would not go. They reflected and considered. The only way to get rid of him was to offer him a pension. And so they reported to the prince. There is nothing else for it, said they. We must get rid of him somehow. Sum fixed was 600 francs, and this was announced to the prisoner. Well, said he, I don't mind so long as you undertake to pay it regularly. On that condition, I am willing to pay. I am willing to go. So the matter was settled. He received 1/3 of his annuity in advance and left the king's dominions. It was only a quarter of an hour by rail, and he emigrated, settled just across the frontier, where he bought a bit of land, started market gardening, and now lives comfortably. He always goes at the proper time to draw his pension. Having received it, he goes to the gambling tables, that is, stakes 2 or 3 francs, sometimes wins, sometimes loses, and then returns home. He lives peaceably and well. It's a good thing that he did not commit his crime in a country where they do not grudge expense to cut a man's head off, or to keep him in prison for life. Okay, my dear students, this is where our first reading ends. Okay, now let's get started. We'll start reading line by line, word by word. Okay, near the borders of France and Italy. What do you mean by borders? Borders means a dividing line between France and Italy. On the shore. There are 2 countries mentioned. Am I right? There are 2 countries mentioned. Which are the 2 countries mentioned? France and Italy. And on the borders of France and Italy, near the borders of France and Italy, near the dividing line between France and Italy, on the shore. What do you mean by on the shore? On the shore of the Mediterranean Sea. Look at it. Okay. On the land along the edge of the sea is what is what is shore. So on the shore of the Mediterranean Sea, the sea mentioned is Mediterranean Sea, lies. Okay, look at that, lies, very, very important word. Lies, what is, what exists. Lies, maybe a lie it is. It is as if it is a lie. You may not find it. Very tiny, little kingdom called Monaco. This tiny thing, look at the 2 adjectives used. Tiny, little. Tiny means little, and you have 2 words here together. Tiny, little. You really can't find it. It is negligible. Kingdom. This tiny thing is called kingdom. Look at the contrast. Look at what is contradictory. Tiny, kingdom. They don't go hand in hand, they don't go together. Called Monaco. That's why it is between France and Italy. It is a dividing line. You may call the line Monaco. On the shore of the sea mentioned. What is the name of the sea? Mediterranean Sea. Okay. Tiny little, they all mean, small, very small, negligible, as I've told you. There is no country at all, in fact. There is no kingdom at all. Whether it exists or not, it can also be a lie, almost like that. It is that, small, that small. Now, minute it is. Many a small country town, look at that. This is a kingdom. Many a small country, many small countries, town can boast more. Boast means have, possess, own, more inhabitants. Inhabitants means, citizens than this kingdom. Look at this. If you compare this kingdom, the kingdom which is, in fact, is the bone of contention, which is mentioned here. This kingdom is a kingdom, a tiny kingdom, a small kingdom, a toy kingdom, a negligible kingdom. Its existence is a question. So this kingdom, if you compare it with your own town, a small country town, the town may have more, inhabitants, but this kingdom doesn't have. Even though it is a small, even though it is a tiny one, even though it is a little one, a dividing line it is on the shore, along the land of the sea, it is there. This is called a kingdom. Why is it called a kingdom? Not because of because of its geography, not because of its land, not because of its population. It's because of one more thing. It's because of one thing. It's because of only one thing. What is that? Okay, you'll come to know the same later. For there are only about 7,000 of them. How many inhabitants? Because the kingdom has how many people, inhabitants, citizens, ಪ್ರಜೆಗಳು ಅಂತ ನಾವೇನು ಕರಿತೇವೆ, ಜನರುಗಳು ಅಂತ ನಾವೇನು ಕರಿತೇವೆ. How many does this kingdom have? How many does it have? It has 7,000 of all. 7,000 of them all told. What do you mean by all told? All told means, it's idiomatic. It means including everything, everyone, everything. In all, including everything. Okay? ಎಲ್ಲರನ್ನು ಸೇರಿಸಿದರೆ ಹೌ ಮೆನಿ ಎಷ್ಟಾಗ್ತಾರೆ ಹಾಗಿದ್ರೆ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ 7,000 ಆದರೂ ಇದನ್ನು ಏನು ಕರೆಯಲಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಕಿಂಗ್ಡಮ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಲಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇಫ್ ಆಲ್ ದ ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ಗೋ ಟು ದ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಪೇಜ್. ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಇನ್ ಕಿಂಗ್ಡಮ್ ವರ್ ಡಿವೈಡೆಡ್, ದೇರ್ ವುಡ್ ನಾಟ್ ಬಿ ಆನ್ ಏಕರ್ ಫಾರ್ ಈಚ್ ಇನ್ಹ್ಯಾಬಿಟೆಂಟ್. ಇಲ್ಲಿರುವ ಜಾಗವನ್ನೇನಾದರೂ ನಾವು ಡಿವೈಡ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಮನುಷ್ಯನಿಗೆ 1 ಎಕರೆ ಕೂಡ ಬರಲಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೂ ಇದನ್ನು ಕಿಂಗ್ಡಮ್ ಅಂತ ಕರೀತಾರೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದಿಸ್ ಟಾಯ್ ಕಿಂಗ್ಡಮ್, ಲುಕ್ ಅಟ್ ದಿಸ್, ದಟ್ಸ್ ವೈ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಅ ಟಾಯ್ ಕಿಂಗ್ಡಮ್, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ its inhabitants are not more. Our small country town may have more inhabitants than this kingdom. Moreover, if it is its land is divided, one may not get more than an acre. That's why it is there between two countries. It's a dividing line. It is the land between two countries. It is the land along the sea. Along the sea between two countries, France and Italy. You have to remember these two countries. They are very important. They are the countries, the kingdoms, neighbors, France and Italy. Now, that's why a toy kingdom, there is a real kinglet. It's not because it has enough land. It's not because it has enough inhabitants. They are not considered. What is most important here is the king. The kinglet there, not a king he is a kinglet. The king of a tiny kingdom, tiny place, tiny land, tiny, little land. He lives like a king. He wants to live like a king. Even though he lives over people, he doesn't have many people. He does not own many people. There are no more than 7,000 inhabitants, including everything. It means all told is equal to including everything. But there is a real king who wants to live like a king of a large country, like, the king of Italy, the king of France, like that it is. He has a palace. Why is a real king? Whether the inhabitants have, shelters or not, it doesn't matter to him otherwise, at least. He has a palace. This is a toy kingdom. This is a small, tiny kingdom, little kingdom. But it has a real king. That's why, he's called a real kinglet. He wants to live like a king. He has a palace. Even though the people there do not have enough land, he has a palace. He has courtiers. One who is there to, help him, praise him, to do his things, chores. And he has ministers. Look at it. The third category. And a bishop, a priest, and generals and army, all sorts of people to help him, to make his chores easier, to ease his chores. There are all these categories of people. Okay, a palace, courtiers, ministers, and a priest, a bishop, and generals, and the last one is an army. That's why he is a real kinglet. Even though it is a toy kingdom, he is a real kinglet. Okay, are you with me? Are you able to follow? Okay, now it's not a large army. If you talk about an army, usually what comes to our image is an army is something which has a number of people. But here, don't think it is a large army. It's not that type of army. This army has only 60 people in all. How many people are there in army? May come in the examination as an objective question. Only 60 people. But still it's an army because there is a real kinglet. Because of him. You have to call it an army. There are also taxes in the kingdom as elsewhere. That's why you have to call it a kingdom, because there is a real kinglet. Here you have taxes as elsewhere, as you see in other kingdoms. Now, what all taxes do we have here? A tax on tobacco. The use of tobacco is not prohibited, but you may use, but you have to give your governance tax money for the same, for the usage. On wine, if you consume wine, you have to pay taxes. And spirits, the same, wines and spirits. If you consume them, you have to give your government tax and a poll tax, a tax on a person. If he is alive, if he is there, this tax is exercised, a poll tax. So five types of taxes there. Tax on tobacco, a tax on wines and spirits, a tax on a poll tax. Three types of taxes: a tax on tobacco, on wine and spirits, and a poll tax. Now, but though the people there drink and smoke as people do in other countries, that's why they smoke, they drink, that's why there are taxes. That's how he has found his sources of income. That's why he has exercised taxes on them. Now, levy taxes on them. But there are so few of them that the prince would not have been hard put to it to feed his courtiers and officials to keep himself. Look at this. This was hard for him. Living life was hard for him because there were not many people who used to drink or smoke, and his source of income was restricted, was stopped because there weren't many people who drank and consumed, who drank and smoked in the country. Not many.